2020, Be the Revival, India and a Better World. I'm your host, Priyanka Deo, reporting live from New Delhi, and I'm super excited. We've had some fabulous panel discussions all day today. We're going to keep having them, so let's stay tuned for more. With that being said, we have this just in, actually, over 10,000 registered attendees from over 52 countries. So it is truly India's global conference. And as Manoj said in his video, what a great way to share ideas and collaborate. If you are taking screenshots, if you're posting on social media, if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, you have anything, share your thoughts with us. Use hashtag #BeTheRevival and post away. I'm tracking them live, so hopefully we can get to some of your thoughts and some of your questions during the sessions. With that being said, let's get started into the next session. Australia manages over 100 billion US dollars in manufacturing output and is one of the fastest growing export sectors. India can explore collaboration with Australia as part of Make in India in areas including robotics, genomics, chemical feedstock, and electrical storage. Let's explore that further. I know I want to know more about it. I certainly want to introduce our moderator. Our session title is called Reviving Manufacturing, Co-Innovate, Co-Collaborate, and Co-Create. The session's in-country partner is Newland Global Group and is presented by Trade and Investment Queensland, Asia Society Australia, the Australia-India Business Council, Asia Link Business, Global, the Chamber of Commerce and Industry Western Australia, Australia-India Institute Delhi, and India Link. With that being said, without further ado, I now give it to the moderator for this session, Ms. Natasha Jha Bhaskar, General Manager, Newland Global Group. Natasha, namaste again. The stage is yours.
And getting straight to a very intense discussion on manufacturing. So good afternoon, Australia. Good morning, India. A very warm welcome to the Australia stream of India Global Week 2020. A great pleasure to have a very distinguished panel of speakers today who will tell us more on one of the most talked about sectors in the new COVID reality, the manufacturing sector. Disruption in exports and global supply chains, if they have exposed our vulnerabilities, they have also opened us to new opportunities and possibilities. Can the manufacturing sector aid faster economic recovery? And if so, what does one need to do to ensure competitiveness of the manufacturing sector? With constant evolution, embracing technological changes and ways to add value to customers and the markets decide who will thrive and who will win in this global market. Joining us today are speakers Michael Sharpe. Michael Sharpe is the National Director, Industry, Advanced Manufacturing Growth Center, which is an industry-led, not-for-profit organization which supports the development of a world-leading advanced manufacturing industry in Australia. AMGC is connected with a nationwide network of manufacturing SMEs and universities. AMGC's role is to help manufacturers unlock new commercial opportunities and drive innovation in Australian manufacturing. Michael has vast industrial experience and will share his insights with us today. Also joining us is Dr. Christiane Hamacher. She is CEO and Managing Director of Biocon Biologics, which is transforming lives and transforming healthcare through innovative and inclusive healthcare solutions. Dr. Hamacher has over 20 years of leadership experience in both strategic and operational roles across the value chain in global pharma, spanning Asia, Europe, and the US. Also joining us for this session is Dr. Arindam Bhattacharya. He's Managing Director and Senior Partner of the Boston Consulting Group, India. He's a member of the Global Advantage, Industrial Goods, Operations, and Public Sector Practices at BCG. He's currently leading research on the radical shift in globalization and its implications for global firms. He has worked extensively on competitiveness of industrial companies and has led a lot of work with the Government of India. Thank you, all three of my panelists on this panel. Our session today will explore 4 themes. First, why manufacturing matters, the potential of the manufacturing sector. The second theme, changing trends within the manufacturing sector and the technologies which are transforming the manufacturing sector. So Industry 4.0, what does it mean to all of you? The third theme is identifying synergies between Australia and India. Designed in Australia, made in India, something which we at the Newland Global Group has been promoting. What does it stand for, and can we really have this mantra executed in reality? And what exactly is the way forward? What are the lessons to remember? So these are the four themes which we'll try to understand in this particular session. Starting with the first theme, Michael, my question to you. Why is it important for an economy to have a strong manufacturing base? Why manufacturing matters in the first place?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I guess we're seeing that right now with the current crisis. We've seen manufacturing not just be a industry sector, but a nation's capability. And so the ability to pivot and make medical PPE and such things as hospital beds and hand sanitizer. Here in Australia, we've seen that pivot very quickly, and the capability of particularly our small businesses to adopt new technologies to serve the nation in a time of crisis has been outstanding. We talk about the digital transformation of manufacturing, Industry 4.0. Well, really, I guess it starts back to Industry 1. Industry 1.0 with steam power, and how that was a step change in world history, and it changed everything. We have one of our member companies is the Varley Group in Newcastle. That company is now 132 years old, still owned by the same family. George Varley started the company by transforming sailing ships into steam-powered vessels. And think about all the changes that family business has been through over 132 years, through times of war and recession and everything else that we've been through. But they adopt new technologies, they upskill their workforce, and they're now employing over 1,000 people in that one company. Industry 2, the second industrial revolution. Think about Henry Ford and all the transformation that happened with mass production. And at the time, people would say, well, what about the jobs? What will we do with the jobs now with mass production? There'll be less jobs. And I think that's a similar talk to what we're hearing around the world today. And yet the smart companies are adopting this new technology, and they are getting smarter. Skills plays a big part. And that takes, to the third industrial revolution. Industry 3 was pretty much when I was at school. And Bill Gates put out a book at the time called Business at the Speed of Thought, and how that was going to change the world with the advent of email and the internet. But again, we adopted, companies have grown. We certainly have a lot more skills than what we did back then. And I believe that right now with Industry 4.0 and the power of collaboration, not just between industry, but also between nations, will be even more important.
Thank you, Michael, for that. And I think that's a very important point you made, that how cooperation and collaboration is indeed a way forward. And we will delve deeper into this, but bringing in Arindam into this conversation. Arindam, cost of labor, energy, infrastructure challenges, regulatory issues, these remain to be very, very key concerns when we talk about the manufacturing sector. What, in your opinion, is really the assessment of India's manufacturing sector currently, and what is really changing in this landscape, the manufacturing landscape of India, and what needs to change, in your opinion?
That's a very complex question, but let me try and see if I can break it up into different parts and just share my thoughts. Just to go back to your first question, manufacturing is clearly important, and why every country today is focusing on manufacturing is because it creates jobs. It creates jobs from low skill to high skill, and particularly for people, countries like India, where there's a lot of migration that will happen from rural and agricultural sector. So the manufacturing is the first port of call for all these jobs to be created. Now, when you think about manufacturing, traditionally, manufacturing has been seen at multiple levels of technology intensity. So you have the labor-intensive manufacturing sector, then you start getting into more engineering and skill-driven, and now what we are seeing is really the third set, which is really around how do you use digital technologies to fundamentally change the way manufacturing is done and supply chains configured around the world. So coming to India now, India at one time we used to celebrate the fact that India seemed to have jumped this manufacturing kind of phase of economic development by going to services, and used to laud the fact that services contribution to GDP is at that time around 55-60%. But the fact is that services sector by itself cannot create enough jobs to absorb all the additional labor force that is getting either born or migrating out of agriculture. So the importance of manufacturing was recognized. And I remember in 2006, I wrote a report saying that India has been stagnating at around 14 to 15% manufacturing as a share of GDP. We really need to push it to more like 25%. And that was first time I think the governments have started talking about 25% of GDP as manufacturing. And that since then has remained a kind of a constant objective. We have not really been able to move the needle for a variety of reasons. Now, some of the factor cost issues that you have said, which is around the power, industrial power cost, cost of land, labor cost is not, labor India is very competitive in labor rates, but the productivity index labor is still, not as competitive. So some of the factor costs, and then the cost of compliance is still something that we can do a lot of work on. A lot of work has happened in the past few years, but there's still a long way to go. So we need to absolutely work on the factor cost and compliance cost for sure. But at the same time, what I find it very interesting is despite these, in some sense, kind of cost penalties, India has been able to build a world-class, globally competitive either industry, and particularly two industries and many companies across industries. The two industries are very clearly, one of them is represented here, is pharma, and the other one is auto. But then you have globally competitive countries, companies in pretty much every sector. So in some sense, if you bring in the right kind of talent, competencies, and management skills, you can overcome some of the penalties that we have and build a world-class company and world-class sectors. And we need more of that.
You mentioned factor and cost economists, Arindam, and especially at this time when India is actually doing substantially a lot of work on how to actually encourage companies to be investing in India, and how do you look at the supply chain currently that exist in India, and how feasible it is when we're talking about emerging as an alternative or as a strong manufacturing powerhouse?
See, there are two parts to this. One is, India today is very, very large importers of large number of manufactured goods. And there's no reason why we cannot be more competitive so that we can manufacture them. And there's a multiple set of what I'll call constraints that we have to release. I mean, a typical example of something that we did recently, BCG, is India is one of the fastest growing markets for air conditioners, for example. And we today manufacture a lot of our air conditioners, but we import a lot of key components of air conditioners. And the question to me is, why should we be importing some of the components like compressors when we are building a certain scale? And we have exactly the same kind of skills that are required in building a compressor as you have in automotive industry. So there is an opportunity to build a highly competitive, I'm not saying protected, but highly competitive kind of manufacturing base, which is catering to, with growing scale, catering to the domestic market. And compressor is one, but electronics has been something that India has been talking about for a long time, and there are many other such product categories where we can build a large-scale, highly competitive industry. Then we talk about exports. Now, exports and a global trade is a lot more complex. I mean, a lot more complex because in many ways, this is not just the decision of India to be competitive, it is also how the global companies look at configuring their supply chains. Now, the massive configuration that happened in the 1990s and 2000s as China joined and the emerging markets started opening up, integrating into the world supply chains, that has in some sense reached a set of maturity. And it's not that a large capacity from high-cost Western countries will move to India. But within the emerging markets, there will be shift of capacities based on relative competitiveness. So capacity will shift from China outside, the capacity will shift from India outside or into India. So it's then has now become cost competitiveness within the emerging markets rather than being more competitive than say in Europe or US. So that's a very dramatic change in how global supply chains will emerge. The other change, I think, which was mentioned earlier is the impact of all the Industry 4.0 technologies. And that is, again, changing the cost economics of how do you manufacture and where do you manufacture. And it has both implications for India and other emerging markets, but also implications for a lot of the large consumption markets in the Western countries.
Right. So what you're saying is that one really needs to identify the natural advantages in comparison with these competing countries. Bringing in Christiane here. Christiane, it's interesting because it was only yesterday when Prime Minister Modi reiterated in his inaugural address to the India Global Week that how pharmaceutical industry is actually, India's pharmaceutical industry is not just an asset for India, but is actually an asset for the whole world. And it's interesting because we have seen the journey which the pharmaceutical industry has taken from the import, from the import dependence before the 1970s to today, where India is actually the third largest pharmaceutical industries in the world by volume. Out of the top 20 global generic companies, 8 are from India. What's your assessment of India's pharmaceutical manufacturing and where India is really headed in the global scenario?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, India plays such a major role when it comes to pharmaceuticals, generics, and now also other parts of the pharmaceutical industry like biosimilars, biotechnology is truly, truly emerging. Where does it play a major role and where can it head? I think the COVID crisis really shows us something. We need very robust and reliable production as well as supply chain. Everybody expects that essential medicines need to be available. Also now, despite certain logistic obstacles. And on the other hand, what is now also a high need is we see across the world that medicines are being repurposed, and we do the same in our group for the treatment of COVID. There needs to be a lot of flexibility and agility, and there needs to be a lot of scale to then produce medicines also in today's situation with COVID, so that the world can be treated. And India already has 3,000 facilities, manufacturing facilities in pharma biotech that are approved, and more than 400 when it comes to US FDA approval. So we need to be robust, reliable, we need to have the scale, we need to be extremely flexible to be shifting now to the new medications that are needed. And then one additional thing comes on top. My firm belief is that healthcare systems across the world, at least the majority, face additional cost pressure because of the COVID crisis. We need to be able to provide affordable medications for the treatment of COVID, but also for all other treatment and therapeutic areas across the world in an even more affordable way. And I think here there's a huge, huge opportunity for India to play an even bigger role for generics, for biosimilars. These are the generics of biologics, more complex molecules, the biosimilars. My prediction is that the need will be higher than ever. So we have as a muscle, the scale, the flexibility, as well as the affordability that India can bring. And when it comes to synergies, we need technology, we need robotics, we need to be able to predict demand. And there I see synergies also with Australia and their expertise.
That's a very interesting point you made, Christiane, about how affordability, access, and quality, of course, is the very core of the healthcare. And India, of course, can show the way, because when you talk about pharmaceutical industry in the generics, it is in fact leading the way. You mentioned about Industry 4.0. What possibilities you see for in the area of innovation? Because just as much we're talking about manufacturing and technology upgradation, it's also very intricately linked with innovation and research. And that spending is unfortunately going down. If I talk about Australia, the nation's investment in R&D has actually fallen by 12% since 2013. And India's investment in R&D, and correct me if I'm wrong, is less than 1% of GDP. So how do you look at this really picking up? We're talking about Industry 4.0, we're talking about manufacturing, and simultaneously we are reducing our spending on research and development.
Yeah, this is a very important topic, because I think the private sector, the academia, and the government need to come together to provide platforms so that we can also have a top-class research further and further emerging. We now again see during the times of COVID the task that researchers and clinicians have to do to quickly provide solutions. So I think there's a high need that we are evolving science. And we see lots of diseases still increasing. We have not solved the problem of cancer. We see that diabetes is an emerging global pandemic. We need solutions, and we need solutions to find new targets for treatment. We need solutions from scientists, from researchers, to come up with ways that makes medicines in the most affordable way possible. A high investment in research and a collaboration between the governments, academia, private sector, I think it's absolutely needed.
Right, and in fact, research and development remains a very key sector of collaboration between Australia and India. Several research institutes are doing remarkable work with many Indian institutes across both countries. Michael, you've called it mission critical, and you've said that why Industry 4.0 is very, very important. The focus has to shift from heavy industry to high-tech products. Where are we on Industry 4.0, and where do you think Australia and India can really collaborate?
In so many ways. I mean, Industry 4 is so much more than just production. We say it's more than just making today in manufacturing. It's a whole curve from research. We our great researchers that can aid industry. It's a great privilege of mine to take professors out onto the factory floors and to connect with industry and break down those barriers for designing and building new innovations that can be exported globally. So think about in Australia, we have some of the world's best food production, so high quality foods in a trusted environment, which can be exported to India and put into local supply chains for building high value food products. It could be around the packaging design, because we know that design plays an important part. One of our members is a company called Dresden Vision, and they've developed new technology for using recycled plastics to manufacture prescription eyewear. So to make glasses at the waste source and using waste in the supply chain, repurposed for high value goods, which can be manufactured right at the source in India. So imagine that we could have these micro factories right across India, creating local jobs and upskilling the local workforce. This is certainly the way of the future around collaboration between researchers and industry to drive the jobs of tomorrow.
What sort of components are we talking about when we're talking about Industry 4.0, and how do you really see these components? Because it looks like a double-edged sword. For a country like India, which talks about a cost and low productivity, and of course cheap labor. How does this really go to impact, the Indian industry?
Well, we're seeing the uptake of digital transformation, particularly around robotics, being a job creator. Now, people have this fear that robots will take jobs, and in actual fact, the reverse is opposite. with robotics, manual handlers can lift more, so it creates a much safer working environment. And in addition to that, the robots can be quite repetitive, which improves the quality of those products. You improve the quality of the products, you're going to gain more customers. And so this is where we're seeing job creation and upskilling. If you think about it, someone who's just currently manual handling is being upskilled to be a robotics technician. And pretty much these days, if you think about it, children who can use a PlayStation can now operate a robotics welding machine. And that's just one example. It's quite exciting what the opportunities are opening up to us all around the globe. But again, it's going to be these great collaborations that we can develop between nations such as India and Australia that'll really create opportunities.
Right. So in a way, you're saying that this fear is completely uncalled for, that robotics or automation will take away jobs. Of course, it'll actually enhance the competitiveness of industries and create ways to provide more jobs. Arindam, from your perspective, what's your opinion on Industry 4.0, and which technologies you think it's important for us, to be focusing on? Arindam?
I had muted myself. So I said, when you think about Industry 4.0, you can broadly think about Industry 4.0 in two parts. So one is the hardware. Hardware is 3D printers, the robots, the sensors that you put into machines, and so on. And then you have all the data which is analyzed and which actually is used to improve the productivity and efficiencies of a plant, but also the entire supply chain, going right from the first supplier to the customer. And there you would collaborate across, because data can flow so easily across borders that you can actually build collaboration models across countries and across companies across the world. So these are two broad parts. Now, again, Industry 4.0 is used as a kind of a one word, but there are various ways to think about it. The way, say, an Indian company will think about it will be very different from the way, say, a Western company will think about it. Indian companies will actually, and not just Indian companies, but Western companies who have plants in India would look at putting in these kind of technologies in a much smarter way, where they can maximize the productivity of humans, because the labor cost advantage of India and many other emerging markets as a manufacturing location continues to be important. And just to give an example, I was talking to, say, the global sourcing lead of the largest shoe manufacturing companies in the world. And I was talking to him, so what does this do to their say, global network of plants and sourcing strategies? And his point was very simple. He said, look, today we manufacture nearly more than 90% of our manufacturing within Asia. China, Vietnam, Indonesia, even they're looking at Myanmar. Some part of it is in India and so on, Cambodia. That is not going to change. What is changing is the level of automation we'll put into these plants, because the labor continues to be an important element. So, just kind of wondering that all these plants will ship back to US or Germany is not going to happen for all these labor intensive industries, but they will use Industry 4.0 very smartly. The second point, I think, where India has a unique position is the data that is created and it is analyzed. Now, this requires a set of new skills. Digital supply chains requires a set of new skills, and India, with its strengths in technology sector, in ITES, and the way you can serve, data requirements across the world, gives it a unique opportunity, actually, to be able to play that role. And so, in some sense, we can create the ITES version 2.0, which is actually resting on Industry 4.0. And I'll give you a very specific example. I was talking to an Indian, IT company, and he was saying that today, when they do knee knee replacement. Earlier, all these medtech companies like Johnson & Johnson and many others, they would kind of take a 3D kind of image, then get it a mold made in the US, get a 3D printer to make that that knee and send it back to the hospital. Today, that entire process of data processing and designing the 3D design for the mold can be done in India, because it is a data intensive and analytics intensive process, and they are doing that. They are doing a significant part of that value chain for global companies in India. So in some sense, Industry 4.0 is creating a completely new set of opportunities for a lot of these technology companies to play more in the value chain that is happening.
Right. So, of course, ITES, as you rightly pointed out, is a we can leverage the gains India has made in ITES globally, and of course the skills and the capabilities India has in this particular sector. What, in your opinion, Arindam, if one talks about Make in India 2.0, which is again talking about advanced manufacturing components, how do you see the potential of Make in India 2.0 aligning with Australia's advanced manufacturing and India's aspiration for global competitiveness in this sector? Because Australia's innovation and capability in advanced manufacturing is way ahead. So how do you see India and Australia identifying synergies in this sector?
See, I think there is a bit of, in some sense, misconception making it 2.0. I don't think it's only focused around Industry 4.0. And, that is one part of it, to create how we have a more leading edge industries and sectors. But there is a huge push by this government into actually getting some of the even basic labor-intensive manufacturing, where India seems to have missed the boat, because there are big shifts that are happening in the global supply chains. Furniture, shoes, toys, I mean, there are many others which are highly labor-intensive. These supply chains are changing. They are actually becoming smarter. They use a lot more technology than being purely labor-based today. But that is where there is one big focus of this government to say, can we create these large ecosystems? Because these are actually produced in large ecosystems to give them the scale and competitive advantage. That is one piece. I think the second piece is around what you just said, which is how do we bring more technology into our industry, particularly in some of our smaller industries. That's the second part of what I'll call Make in India 2.0. So both are going together. Now, when I look at Australia, and Australia has certain deep strengths. Okay, we all know Australia's strengths in mining and mining technologies. Mining is becoming a completely automated and Industry 4.0 driven industry. It is safer, it is more productive, and so clearly, as India also opens up its mining, there is an opportunity for bringing those technologies, those advanced technologies into India. The second is, as I just said, is the entire food processing. Australia is a leader in food processing, and India is a leader in producing a lot of raw material, but it processes very little of it. And so there is a huge opportunity in bringing many of those technologies. Another industry which I find it very interesting, Australia has built a unique position, is in medtech, and both in terms of research as well as manufacturing. And again, India imports pretty much most of its, medical devices. So, is there an opportunity for partnerships between Australia and these are very highly advanced, manufacturing industry and products. So is there an opportunity to create more partnerships, because India is such a huge market for as actually India's health systems also improve and more investments go in. There's a huge market. So my sense is these will be initially the three sectors, rather than talking I 4.0. If we can talk about them very specific to sectors. I was very intrigued by this whole way of how you are taking Industry 4.0 to SMEs.
Right.
And is there a way we can adapt some of the learning from there into also India? So I would imagine these would be the four interesting opportunities that we should be able to explore.
Right. Christiane, what sort of, you heard Arindam talking about medtech and the natural, advantage which Australia has in this sector. Where do you see Australia and India really building the strong innovation hubs between the two nations? Which industries can we really look at, and what sort of a partnership can we expect?
Yeah, we can. I think we definitely have to look at the pharma and biotech industry. Pharma biotech is highly regulated. So automated process controls play a very, very critical role. Robotics play a critical role. Pharma biotech operates with a lot of standard operating procedures that colleagues need to perform. There is a way to have a certain technology, a tablet with you, but there are modern technologies where literally via glasses, you have your standard operating procedures with you. This is all about the quality of a product and at the end, the safety, patient safety when it comes to the medication. So automated processes, the latest technology to allow to produce with the highest quality at each and every step. What will that do? The more seamless a production is, the more it will reduce the cost. When we look at the world, I think it's absolutely time that medications are reaching the hundreds of millions of patients in certain segments, cancer therapies, which they can't get today. And we have topics like how can we deliver with technology to remote areas?
Right.
Australia as a country is used to how to deliver to remote areas. We are talking, most of the patients in the world are in the so-called most of the world countries, and a huge number of patients is actually in remote areas. I think the supply chain delivery topic is a very, very important one. How can technology being used? Is it drones that are delivering medication so that patients have truly access to medicines? And to get the innovation, and then the production scale and the quality and the low-cost scale of India, I think these are some technology arenas we definitely should look into. The other question is the use of data, the data mining, the data architecture, the information architecture that then would allow us to distribute medications in the best way, to increase the efficiency and productivity in manufacturing, and to be able to build those data infrastructures, these architectures, and then mine it via artificial intelligence. I see that as a major area for collaboration, create synergies, bring great minds together to find solutions.
That's a very pertinent point, Christiane, because these are unprecedented times which we are in. In fact, we have gone virtual totally. And you mentioned about the need for technology to reach remote areas in India. The doctor-patient ratio in India is, of course, it's a scary figure, and telemedicine is, in fact, emerging as a big sector. So that's a very, very key component, and Australia, again, has a lot of advantages in this sector, be it remote learning, be it telemedicine. Do you see a potential in this mantra when I say designed in Australia, made in India? Do you see this working at all between these two countries?
What I always believe is the strengths of each and everybody should be used. And then it also should be really an exchange of thoughts and to exchange the strengths. What knowledge can be transferred in both ways? Because I think also COVID has taught us one thing. We need to have some diversification. We cannot be only dependent on one country, on one location, on one manufacturing side. So the answer is yes. And how much can knowledge be transferred? And then to put the strengths together and learn. And it's not only about technology and subject matter expertise. A lot of success depends on how we are leading and managing any operations. And beside technical topics, I think leadership, effective management across different cultures, across the world, how we do that in academia, in the private sector, and so on, is also an area to explore, because there's a technical expertise as well as leadership to make things successful.
Right, very well said, Christiane, because policy planning is one thing which we have always been successful in, but when it comes to execution and implementation, how well we do that is something that remains a key concern. Michael, where do you see Australia and India? Because currently we are seeing deliberations around India's self-reliance and Australia's economic sovereignty. Do you see an opportunity for Australia and India to co-innovate, co-collaborate, and co-create? Which industries can we specifically look at?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Australia will always be a trading nation, but certainly we're stronger together. So more that we can collaborate would be better for all of us. We talk about the technologies coming through, and design in Australia and make in India, as you suggest, is already happening on many levels and can only strengthen our trade. We have a company in Brisbane called iOrthotics, and they've developed new technology where I can use my iPhone to scan my foot, and then using the Australian technology can be putting that orthotics and sent anywhere in the world. So it seems to me that we have that technology in country in India, and using the iPhone to scan anywhere in India and manufacturing those orthotics at the source. So creating local jobs in India through Australian technology. Now that seems to me to be a pretty good way of a partnership. So certainly the SME sector in Australia is always innovative, always coming up with new technologies and concepts. And I think we've got a bright future between both our nations.
What will you advise to the companies which are looking to the Indian market, especially in the manufacturing sector? What will be your suggestion for them?
Well, when we're talking about manufacturing, we're saying everything from food production through to the mining sector, as mentioned earlier, to now the space industry. It's a pretty exciting time. I mentioned it's a manufacturing moment, and it truly is. So think about the relationships that can be built between researchers, across industry, across people, because for me it always comes down to people and those human-to-human connections. How do we open up those trade dialogues to create those opportunities? And so if we talk about the mining sector just for one, think about the space sector and how that operates in mining now for autonomous vehicles and mapping the mining sites. That technology can be transferred to work in India, and I'm sure there's opportunities to explore there. So between government with Austrade and Oz Industry and others, I'm sure there's opportunities that we can open up, and anyone in the world should contact us through the AMGC website or the Advanced Manufacturing Growth Centre, because we're certainly making those connections. And with the Australian India Business Council, there's just some great collaboration happening here in Australia right now.
Thank you for that, Michael. Arindam, what are the key lessons we really need to remember, when we are talking about building these collaborations between the two countries, and of course the manufacturing potential of India? Arindam?
Sorry, I'm forgetting that I mute myself. Otherwise, there's a echo. So if you look at the history of trade, and someone explained to me so nicely, the person told me that when you look at how globalization has happened, first thing that you got globalized was really raw material sources, that you started looking at raw material sources, particularly in the colonies. Then at that time you had empires. And then you started globalizing manufacturing. And then now you started globalizing really in some sense, then happened services, and India was one of the forefronts of globalization of services, and IT services part of it. And now we have globalized data, and everything that rests around data has getting more and more globalized. So ideas are transferred around data. So, and that's where the value is also being created. And what is happening is really, in some sense, because these have gone in phases. I mean, most global companies today are networks. They have multiple innovation centers, both their own as well as partnerships around the world, because they want to source the top talent. So it's not that they want to look at just Australia or India or any. They are looking at top talent around the world. They are looking at skills, manufacturing skills, which allows them to manufacture the right kind of product in the right place at the right cost to serve the global customers. Similar for services. And now you are looking at also all kinds of ideas, innovation, and that's one part. The second part is each country is also now thinking where are their strengths and what are the investments, because no one can build capabilities in every area. And so one of the interesting thing is now it's also a period of extreme specialization that is important. And if we as a consultant go into any client, I mean, they will not like a generalist, they will like a specialist, complete specialist. So exactly the same thing is happening in terms of countries' competitiveness. You need to find a way of building skills and specialization. And Australia has certain unique strengths, and India has also some unique strengths. And if we are able to partner them, I mentioned some of the sectors. There could be some other sectors as well, which I have limited knowledge of, but if we are able to do that and focus on some of the sectors, I think we will have a much greater chance of learning rather than trying to do everything with everyone. And that's one of the key lessons, I think, the change that is happening in the way the country's competitiveness and trade between different regions, different countries is evolving.
Right. So what you're saying is important to understand the competitive advantages of each of these countries and how they are actually, how one can specialize rather than generalize. It's interesting, and I'll share that it's only precisely to identify the opportunity. Michael, from this perspective, how exactly, the road ahead, what exactly we should be doing?
Well, we talked about the key stress between nations. So look at the
potential do you see?
Natasha, we talked about the key strengths between our two nations. So imagine that we can come together and using your theme of design in Australia and make in India, and then we can export to the world. So 7 billion potential customers all around the world. Australia, again, will always be a trading nation, and the opportunity to partner with firms in India is a key strength. Let's look together to form these stronger relationships, create global opportunities where we can partner together to increase jobs, create local jobs in Australia and India with world-class products, creating higher value that we can export globally. This is the future. This is advanced manufacturing, designing for a customer's need, designing new technologies, again, from everything from food production right up to the space industry. The new Moon to Mars mission is exciting in its own way, but think about the satellite technology that can be developed and that can be then used across India, but with collaborations and efforts both ways, also used in Australia for both our benefits. So the upskills across manufacturing is happening right now. It's certainly jobs are growing in the manufacturing sector. There are global opportunities. It's a matter of coming together and building on those strengths to design products that the world are looking for.
Right, and in fact, interesting India has itself a target of increasing the share of manufacturing from 7 to 25%. It's been work in progress for the last few years, but now with the new global reality which we are all in, we've seen a slew of reforms that has happened across different sectors, encouraging world over companies to come and invest in India. And in fact, there are many state governments which are now reworking this model as for the land, labor, liquidity challenges that those needed to be addressed. What would you say in terms of building? Christiane?
Natasha, I could not hear you. If you quickly repeat your question, please.
Yes, Christiane, your concluding remarks in terms of what exactly, if I have to ask you to conclude it in a sentence or two about, what we should remember and how do Australia and India can move together when it comes to the manufacturing sector?
I mean, with the fast evolutions that we see across industries, what we really need a partnership where we are complementing each other. Nobody has a full set of strengths. And to clearly identify the areas, and I think there were many examples where the strengths are coming together and where we are building on each other and are also transferring technology and knowledge, and together create new ways how we can operate, creating new jobs and new solutions and opportunities for the future. It's all about building a very fluid and flexible network, depending on where do the specialists sit to find a solution for a specific problem.
Thank you for that, Christiane. Arindam, fast, speed, innovation, quality are key components. What exactly would you say when it comes to reviving manufacturing between both these nations? Where should we look at?
No, I mentioned some of the sectors. I think Australia has some very deep manufacturing capabilities in certain sectors. And today, this is a world today of specialization and skills. And India, in all these sectors, has enormous need of both investments and technologies and skills. And food processing is a great sector where the government, with the recent reforms, is trying to really bring opportunities for global companies, food processing companies, to come and create value for themselves, but also value India and jobs. So there are several sectors, and I really do think that with the close geopolitical relationships between the two countries, I think we have a lot more opportunity to really increase our global trade. And I look at trade not in only physical terms, but also trade in terms of just IP and skills and so on. And there's enormous opportunity of doing that because there are certain deep skills in Australia which I think India can leverage. Natasha is again lost.
Well, I certainly agree with you. There's a great opportunity. It's terrific to see our two prime ministers having such great discussions locally, and I think it's certainly opening up those opportunities for the future. I certainly agree with the comments made here today about strengthening those relationships, potentially a trade in skills as well. So developing this new technology and again being able to export to the world, this is the key driver for manufacturing and developing new markets.
Right, it's time.
Namaste, hello, and welcome
Looks
to
like it's
India
finished.
Global Week. I'm your host Priyanka Deo reporting from New Delhi. That was a fantastic session and especially relevant to India because manufacturing is something that the Prime Minister has also called out for. Prime Minister Modi, he has called out for Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is self-reliant India. And one of the big pushes is to increase manufacturing. So it was a great thing to listen to how manufacturing can be collaborated between India and Australia. With that being said, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts from that fantastic session, I want to first thank our great, fabulous moderator and our panelists for fantastic discussion. If you have any thoughts or comments or questions, please feel free to post on social media. I'm tracking it. We'll make sure it gets to our panelists and our guests over here. Use the hashtag #BeTheRevival. With that being said, we're going to go to our next session just up in a few minutes. Stay tuned, Global Week. Be the Revival, India, and a Better World.